Starting to see a few folks trickle in.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, happy Tuesday, although it feels like Monday because of the long weekend.
Oh yeah, and the weather's just being so gorgeous. It's finally summer. Kind of forgot what that feels like.
Hello, everyone.
Seeing some familiar names.
As you start to join in, yeah, definitely some familiar names. Make sure to let us know in the chat. Just say hey. Say hey in the chat. Just make sure that it's all working and we can communicate with you all.
That you can see us and the slides. Hi, Dave.
Hello. Bernie, welcome back.
Yes, good to see you again. Hi, Geeta and PC and Solange.
I think Solange, were you at the last one? I feel like I remember your name.
Yeah.
Nita.
Hi, Nahum.
Ola. All right, and if you see the OPL-BPO, those are our friends from the Ottawa Public Library. And so, yeah, hey everyone. So we're gonna start in 1 minute. We'll just wait for a few people to come through. Oh, also another note before we start, in the chat, if you want to send that message to everyone, so the panelists and all the attendees, make sure that you select that in the blue circle icon where you can type your message. So you can select all panelists and attendees so we can all engage with one another.
Good evening, Joss.
Okay, so we're at 24 people.
I think we're good to go.
All right. So, hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of the Ultimate Career Strategy Toolkit, where we will be focusing on defining and building your personal brand for your job search. So Sam and I are super excited to be here. Thank you to Jill, Tracy, and Marlene from the Ottawa Public Library for creating this space for us to connect with you this evening. So a lot of you said, hey, how is everyone doing tonight? On a scale of 1 to 10, share how you're feeling. What is your energy like? We did this in the last one. We got a lot of 7s, 8s, 9s.
Especially after work.
7, 11, love it. Hi, Danish.
Hey.
Beautiful. I love the high energy. So my name is Naomi.
And I'm Sam, and we're super excited to be presenting part 2 of the Career Toolkit workshop. So this is a 3-part series that we created to talk about mindset, personal branding, and relationship to help you on your career journey. So thank you to everyone for tuning in tonight and investing in yourselves. You know, today we'll be navigating the topic of building your personal brand using owned and rented media. And our last session that a couple of you attended was on mindset. So we're going to be building on top of that. So we've seen a couple of your names in the chat. So drop in the chat what you're looking forward to learning today. Let us know. And in the meantime, for your information, we just wanted to make sure that this session runs as smoothly as possible. So we just have a few housekeeping items to go over just to make sure that you all get the most out of the workshop. So firstly, please ensure that you have the Career Toolkit ready. If not, we have the link at the top of the chat, and we'll also have the exercises that we'll be going over together in all of our slides. And the second thing we'd love you to keep in mind is we really would love to engage with all of you throughout the call. So feel free to use the chat box to send Naomi and I your questions, comments, or any personal stories that you may want to share. Because, you know, we're all experts in various fields of our lives. So the more we can share, the more we can learn together. And the third thing is that we've created a dedicated question and answer period at the end of the session. So it'll be a great opportunity for you guys to raise your hand so that we can unmute you and we can have that conversation, answer any questions that you may have. So now let's have some fun.
All right, so why are we even here? Why are Sam and I speaking to you this evening? I love community building and creative storytelling. I spend my days working in the international compliance industry. And in 2017, I started a podcast called The Power of Why so that I could really share my platform with global leaders who are using their gifts for good. I've interviewed people in London, UK, New York City, right here in Ottawa. And it's, just being able to use the internet to create different opportunities and really set yourself apart from everyone that is out there. Using your unique voice is something that Sam and I have been learning and really exploring these past few years. So in 2018, Sam and I met at a networking event and we connected over LinkedIn, which is a professional networking site, which we will definitely be going over today. And shortly after, we created a thriving community in Ottawa focused on professional development.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Sam. I really love to dream and bring big ideas to life, especially through digital means and writing as well. So I work as a digital marketer in the real estate industry, where I work to find creative ways to reach our customers. And as Naomi mentioned, over the past 2 years, we really have had the privilege of bringing together and building a beautiful community here in Ottawa. And throughout this journey, it has really taught us the power of personal branding and being able to market ourselves in order to gain opportunities that are aligned with what we're doing. So all of this has really helped us to grow and strengthen our community.
All right, so to share what we'll be going over today, we're going to be going over what is a personal brand and how you can build your own in 2020, the difference between rented and owned media. This is a super interesting topic, so we're excited to talk about that, and different strategies that you can use, using social media to your advantage and being able to share your message online. And, the outcome of this workshop will be jointly to develop a career action plan to help you start to build your personal brand online, and also the in-person component of your brand too, so that you can really go after the job that you want.
So before we dive into what personal branding is, could you guys share with us in the chat, what do you understand personal branding to be currently, or what have you heard about personal branding? We'd love to hear some of your thoughts. Give it a couple of minutes. It means something different to everyone. Naomi says energy. Personal brand is the energy that you bring to the room. How to distinguish myself from others, Solange. Very true. Danish, your story, it's very personal. Yes, completely agree. Carol says, what is unique about you that shows your strength and what you can do for an employer? Bang on. Have you guys seen our slides already? Diane says personality, and Josh says a representation of who you are, but digitally. Thank you for sharing, everyone. One more from Bharat. Tell your story, unique strengths and abilities. So, a personal brand is essentially what you're known for in your industry, and it touches on everything that you guys all said. That all ties into personal branding. It's really the unique combination of skills, experiences, and the personality that you embody. And it's the image of yourself that you put out into the world. And it can be leveraged as a powerful tool to help you advance professionally, as long as you are strategic, consistent, and you monitor it constantly. So whether you're a professional on the hunt for your next job, an entrepreneur looking for clients, a student working to secure a next internship, or even if you're a side hustler dreaming of transitioning your passion to a full-time career, it pays to be able to strategically position yourself in order to influence decision makers and the world at large. So as we all know, the job hunting landscape has really evolved in recent years, and it requires so much more for people to be able to stand out and get the jobs that they want. So that's why now it has really become critical to craft your story and clearly articulate your value proposition and sell yourself to a potential employer, business partner, or a client. Personal branding is a big piece of the puzzle when it comes to showing the world who you are and what you do.
I love that. So what do you guys think when you see these these logos on the screen. Now they're considered very, established brands in the industry. Just by this simple image, you're able to think about what the company is, right? So a brand is the difference between a plain old running shoe, right, a sneaker, versus a pair of Nikes. And a brand is what people feel about you, your product, your service, what you actually provide to your organization. And it's mostly emotional at the end of the day. It's mostly powerful brands are able to evoke a feeling in their customers, in the community, in society, and they are very focused, right? And so a company that's not listed here is Harley Davidson. I love using this example because for them, a big part of their essence and what they're focused on is simply using the word freedom, right? And people are drawn to a brand because they want to feel free and they want to use a product that really aligns with their value proposition. And so brands consider what they want people to feel when they interact with it. And trust is a major key here. They stand for something, right? It's why people listen. It's why they have folks who are waiting in line for hours to get their hands on a new product release. They stand for something, and we cannot really underestimate the power of people buying things to represent who they are. And I know in the chat, some people, mentioned in terms of a personal brand, it's a representation of who you are, but digitally. In this sense, these also, companies, brands also evoke the same feeling. And I remember during my university days, I worked at Starbucks as a barista. And one of the things that I really loved that the company emphasized was on people and, the priority of building relationships. And the CEO at the time, a quote that he often used is, "We are not in the coffee business serving people, but we're actually in the people business serving coffee." And so that definitely, it's been a couple of years since I worked there, and it still stuck with me because I remember that just being the emphasis on how we, had conversations with the people who came through, but also it's more than coffee, it's an experience for people. And so when we think about who owns the brand, who are some of those people that you would think of off the top of your head when we think who owns the brand within a company, or of a company specifically? So who owns the Nike brand? Who owns the Apple brand? Who owns the Starbucks brand? What do y'all think? Steve Jobs. Okay, Bharat said Apple. Steve Jobs is the one who owns that brand. Who owns these brands? Shareholders. Interesting. Clients, employees, frontline staff. That's powerful. Employees. The people, shareholders. Yeah, customers. I love it. So is it the brand manager? Is it the CEO of a particular company? Is it the employee? And at the end of the day, it's really us, right? It's the community. And I think decades ago, branding was seen as this thing that was shouted from a company to the customer. But it's really a conversation, right? It's the people who own the brand. And if you build a powerful brand, like some of these companies have done, it becomes an experience that people talk about rather than just the product itself, right? And they share it with their loved ones, they trust it, they rally for it. And so I think, one of the important things here is that a brand is not a logo. This is simply what you see on the slide are simply symbols for the brand and the company, how they're really representing themselves. It's not a product. It's not a Nike shoe. It's not impressions or likes that you'll find online on different social media posts. And it's definitely not a pitch deck. But a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or company. And you feel it, right? It's a reputation. And so why does this matter? This was the quote that I used for Starbucks particularly. But why does this matter to you personally? Because something similar can really be said about your personal brand. And instead of referring to a product or company, we really want to talk about you, right? So how do we do that? How do we create a brand? How do we create a reputation? it's really about thought association. When people hear your name, you know, online or even in person, how do they feel about, you know, about the reputation that you've built and the expertise that you're also sharing, right? And I think one way that we can do that is through content, through storytelling, by really creating these touch points online so that people can get to know you through your values and what you share and what you really offer to the world, right? And something that one of my favorite creators talks about, Gary Vaynerchuk, is this concept of documenting versus creating. And he believes that, you know, personal branding can really go left quickly when you're not yourself. And I feel that when people think of personal branding, they feel that they need to become this character that is so far from who they are. But I think with whatever we're going to talk about today, everything works, but you just need to find the thing that works for you, right? So much of this is very personal. And so with these three individuals, they are like companies and entities in and of themselves. And we engage with them. We love characters like this. We love individuals like this because they resonate with us. And right when we see Oprah's face, we have a gut feeling about who she is and the energy that she brings to the table. And so let's get right into the content.
Thank you, Naomi, for laying that foundation. You know, as Naomi mentioned, when it comes to personal branding, one big piece that you need to understand before you can even start putting your message out into the world and promoting your products or services is yourself. You know, self-awareness is the foundational piece of personal branding, because if you don't understand who you are, then how can you expect that other people to? And, you know, one great way to get a better understanding of yourself is through performing a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, which is also known as a SWOT analysis. So let me know in the chat, how many of you guys have you heard of the SWOT analysis? Ricardo says yes. Diane says yes. Danish, yes. Yes, yes. Okay, perfect. You know, Naomi and I both went to business school, and this was a tool that was used in almost every single one of our classes. It's really a staple, and it's a great way in which businesses can identify their internal strengths and weaknesses, as well as their external opportunities and threats. And it's such a great framework to use to understand companies. But what we've really come to realize is how much more powerful it is when you use it to understand yourself. So when conducting a personal SWOT analysis, you really must think about what you want to get out of it. So are you looking to step outside of your comfort zone, or are you looking for a new job? Do you want to be promoted, or are you just looking to grow in your personal life? You know, a SWOT assessment is fantastic for you in all of those cases, as it provides critical information that you need to help assess where your career is and create a strategic plan for the growth of it. So now we're going to get into the fun part. So let's dive into our first exercise of the session and complete your own personal SWOT analyses. So please could you turn to page 2 in the worksheet. If you don't have it, that's okay. We have the exercise on the slides. So just make sure you have a piece of paper and a pen. And once you're ready to go, say yes in the chat. Yes, Bernie. Yes, Louis. Solange. Yes, yes, yes. Great. Okay. So we're going to start with the internal part of things. So that's what you have control over, which is your strengths and weaknesses. You know, these are the things that you can either leverage to your advantage or influence them for the better. So starting by identifying your strengths, you know, these are the traits and skills that set you apart from others. And this is where you can pull out all of your accomplishments and things that you've done that you're super proud of. And there's no need to be modest here. So, you know, your strengths are things like your professional qualifications or certifications that you have. You know, any qualities or expertise that you feel separates you from others, or any resources available to you and projects that you have completed successfully. So just take some time to think about that. And I know it can be sometimes challenging to list out all of these things. So you can start by asking yourself a couple of these questions, like, what are you naturally good at? or how does your education skills, your talents, your certifications, how do they set you apart from your peers? And, you know, what achievements are you most proud of? So we're going to take a couple of minutes here just to give you some time to answer some of these questions. And if you feel comfortable, share some of your strengths in the chat. Yes, they can be soft skills, being a great listener, communication, you know, all of those are strengths. Building relationships in community and with clients. That's a big one. Because most often you can't get far alone, right? So you need that community. That's great, Tara. Communication from Yasser, big one. And teamwork, I love that. And if you feel like you don't have enough time to fill out every single strength, that's completely fine. Tonight, we're just going to be helping you, you know, set that foundation, and you can continue to build on this list afterwards. So moving on to the next one. Next, we have, you know, the weaknesses. This section really examines the areas in which you need to improve and the things that will set you back in your career. You know, it can be sometimes difficult to look at these things, but by listing them down, you're really gaining power over them, as you can really look at them for what they are and start to create plans to overcome them. So weaknesses can be things like, you know, do you have the necessary qualifications or the skills to be successful in your current or future roles? Or, you know, do you have bad habits? For example, always being late or poor communication, things like that. So some questions to help you figure out your list of weaknesses is, you know, where are your education, training, or skills lacking? Or what would your boss or coworkers say are your weaknesses? And what are some of the negative work habits and personality traits that you have? You know, it's really important to be honest with yourself here and really dive deep, because that's the only way you'll be able to, you know, look at what's going on and grow from there. So here we're going to take another couple of minutes just for you guys to answer. And again, feel free to share in the chat. See from Bernie, difficulty finding an editor and taking the next steps, fear of putting work out there. Yeah, fear is a big one that we all share. Solange, I have high expectations and may be careful to recognize that not everyone is the same. Yeah, that's a tough one, especially if you hold yourself to a high regard, you know. Now I'm procrastination, a couple of procrastination, overthinking from Danish. Carol Age took a break to care for parents and raise twins, trying to transition to higher ed and have previously only worked in corporate. That's a great area where you can look at your strengths as well. Like, what were some of the things you're able to learn in corporate that you're able to use as you grow in your career and change paths? You know, every experience is good experience, right? Thank you everyone for sharing and being so open to being vulnerable.
So
you know, weaknesses are really tough to admit to yourself and then to share. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of opportunities, you know, Sam, with the strengths and the weaknesses, she noted things that are really inside of your control, right? And so when you're looking at your opportunities, this is really a look at the external factors that you can take advantage of, you know, whether it's to find a new job or change your career, ask for a promotion, move to a new company, make any sort of transition, right? And if there are any advancements that are in your industry that you can take advantage of, Is there new technology or maybe an interesting, like an increasing trend that you are noticing in the field, especially right now, considering that, you know, a lot of us are not able to go into the office. Things have been disrupted in very big ways. And so what are some trends that you're seeing that are really going to take off during this period? So here, some questions that you can really ask yourself are, what is the state of the economy? Do you have a network of strategic contacts to help you during this period, or even offer some good advice when it comes to transitioning? Is your industry growing? Is it getting bigger? Is it like one example of an industry that's really growing is e-learning. And so with a lot of us being able to work from our computers, you know, that's a huge industry that's projected to just continue to grow. Same with e-commerce. So is there new technology in your industry? I'd love to hear, you know, some examples that you have depending on what you currently do for work, whether you're an entrepreneur or you work in the industry. For example, some of these things can be even, you know, finding opportunities at networking events, right? So these are, you can find them while taking educational classes or even at conferences in your industry. And if you're feeling even more, you know, excited for a new challenge, you can raise your hand for a new role in your company, or even a project that forces you to really learn these skills, like what you guys are mentioning in the chat around communication and time management. So yeah, what are some of the opportunities that you are noticing in your industry, the world at large, in society right now? I'd love to hear. So these are things that are very positive and are out of your control. Leverage foreign languages. I speak for promoting diversity in the workforce. Love it. Wisdom and age and experience. Excellent writer and communicator and well-versed in technology. Love it. Necessary to promote digitally. Global perspective. Huge. Evolution in the digital trends and new tech. I'm a digital consultant. That's great, PC. Opportunity. Bharat said research and present fact-based data to drive digital transformation projects. Love it. The use of social media is definitely going up. Yeah. Solange. Bernie said, initially thought of hard copy book, now consider an ebook. Yep. Easier to self-publish, more freedom for writers. Absolutely. Yes. Artificial intelligence, online learning, webinars, app development, huge. We talk a little bit about app development later on around owned media. Oh, so Solange said not all comments are including the whole group. Okay, please, so Gaurav, yours is strictly going to Sam and I. So if you wanted to open that up and change it to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see, that would be awesome. So many great things here. So yes, I guess the most important thing to note in the opportunities section is what are things that you're noticing that are like playing in the global sphere, maybe in your community, that you can really plug into, things that are sort of growing, expanding. When it comes to your threats, these are basically, you know, are there any personal traits that are hurting your career advancement? Are there any changes in the industry that could affect your job? And some questions that you can ask yourself to really hone in on what these potential threats could be is your industry contracting, or is it changing direction? Are there any obstacles that you currently face in your career? Is there strong competition for the types of jobs that you are well suited for and that you studied and, you know, really developed in your career? And are there any external dangers to your current goals as well? So these are things that are out of your control, similar to opportunities, but they're unfavorable, right? So right now, a lot of industries are being hit, especially in the service area, whether it's restaurants, shopping malls, that sort of thing. And right now, yeah, I like that. Hiring freezes across higher education. Yes, Murdoch. Strong competition, which makes branding even more important. interesting note. Yeah, Bernie, I agree. Vivian, yeah, there will be a recording sent. I don't know if it'll be right after the webinar, but Jill definitely has those details. Younger, cheaper candidates, people who have already or who have experience in higher ed, inside candidates. Yeah, low preference by employers to look at candidates' transferable skills when shifting industries. That's huge. It's huge, and it's such a I don't know, it kind of makes me sad because there's so many, especially if you're changing industries, there's so many ways that you can transfer the different skills that you have, right? So being able to brand that and market those specific skills is very important. Threat to field sales rep from inside sales rep these days. Leveled playing fields in production. Yeah, so all these things are sort of unfavorable, out of your control. And the exercise to really double down on some of these insights are, when you're looking at your strengths, a lot of people put communication, project management, those sort of skills. How can we emphasize our strengths? So if we know that we're really talented in communication naturally, what are some of the things that you can do to really double down on that as a strength? Could you potentially hire a speaking coach? Watch videos so that you can learn different techniques that you can use in different workshops that you host, or even when you're on stage, or even specifically in the classroom. How can you emphasize the strengths that you currently have and have gotten really good at? I'd love to hear for folks who, like, what are ways that you can emphasize what you're already fantastic at? Anyone? Yeah, so in terms of jobs, absolutely. Quantitative indicators on LinkedIn. Carol? And when it comes to your weaknesses, there are different thoughts around, is it best to cover them up, maybe delegate your weaknesses, things that you're not necessarily gifted in, or is it best to just actually improve what your weaknesses are? So depending on how you feel about the subject, what can you do to really compensate or cover up your weaknesses, right, in terms of improvement? When it comes to the opportunities that are available, how can we maximize them? How can we, if we notice an area is really growing, like the e-learning space right now, how can you double down into this if you already, for example, have a product right now? Maybe it's in physical form, like one person in here mentioned how they have a hard copy book, but now they're thinking about doing an ebook. Right? Because this is because it's a growing area, there's so many ways that you can really maximize an area that's just taking off right now. And when it comes to your threats, how can we protect ourselves from threats? So if the industry that you're currently in is contracting or getting smaller, what are ways that you can shield yourself from potential cuts in your company? Whether it's moving to a different area, whether it's increasing or improving your skills. What are some ways that you can protect yourself from things that are unfavorable and completely out of your control? So these are some questions that you can really get into. And that's what I love about the SWOT analysis, is that it's so versatile. It's very simple, but it can be applied to both the business world, to our organizations, but also to our personal decisions and the goals that we decide to double down on, right? And as Sam mentioned earlier, it's not something that you can finish in one sitting. It's going to completely change. Even tomorrow, you can look at it and have a completely different outlook on what you could fill those 4 quadrants in, right? And if you're feeling you want to contribute and actually bring people on this learning process with you, Something that you can also do is reach out to people who are in your circle to be a part of this process too. You can reach out to your friends, acquaintances, family, your colleagues, your boss, people that you went to school with maybe, and ask them to conduct a SWOT analysis for you. Because what you'll notice is that it's fascinating to see that people who are part of different aspects of your life, the notes that they mention and certain things about your behavior, maybe strengths that you didn't even know were your strengths and you thought were just came natural to everyone. So I think it's really important to involve people in this process, with you, so you can really learn about things that you have, maybe there were specific blind spots that you didn't know about previously.
That's very well said, Naomi. I really wanted to emphasize the point you made about, self-awareness changing. It's never a fixed destination. And as you all grow and evolve, so too do your strengths and weaknesses. That's why it's so important to make it like a lifelong habit to continue to get to know yourself. And above all, love yourself and the journey that you're on, because there's no one else on the planet with the same gifts that you've been given. And that being said, we really now have the foundation for self-awareness. So we can start diving into the tools available for you to take the next step and start to build your personal brand. So why is personal branding so important? A lot of us mentioned in the chat as well, it's not enough to have just your resume outlining your skills. The competition has gotten so much more fierce. So you need to do a lot more in order to stand out. And as the world grows increasingly digital, we really need to have the capability to share our stories and our work online for prospective employers, and the community to be able to reference back to our work and see what we've been doing when opportunities arise. But however, there's a common misconception that personal branding only lives in the digital realm. But the digital world is only one piece of the puzzle. So try to think of personal branding as this, big umbrella that really encompasses a number of different aspects. And the two main ones would be, the digital and the in-person. And both of these really need to come together in order to tell your well-rounded story about you and what you do. So, this is who you are, and your personal brand is just an extension of that. As Amazon's Jeff Bezos points out, branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And having a personal brand, whether you build it consciously or not, is one way to be able to control this narrative, because we all have a personal brand, because guess what? People are going to talk about you no matter what. And personal branding is really about controlling that story and not leaving the success of your career up to chance. So once you have built your brand and really defined it well and communicated the value that you bring and to whom, it will be what helps to keep you top of mind when people are looking for providers for certain products or services. So for example, if you built a very strong brand around like website development or like user experience design, for example, whenever conversations about these projects come up involving these things, then your name would come up amongst your network. So this is what really allows you to tap into those opportunities that can really help to advance and grow your career. And even as the world grows increasingly digital, the best form of marketing will always be word of mouth. And a strong personal brand is what will help you get your name into people's mouths. So starting with the online aspect, the great thing about the digital age we're living in is that it has really increased the potential audience of people that you're able to reach. And this means that by using your online platforms to share your messages and your work, which is essentially your personal brand, you're now able to reach a wider variety of people and increase your likelihood of landing opportunities that are suited to your skills and your passions. So some components of your personal brand could include, the Google results, if you have a website or a blog that you regularly maintain, or even social media. And as I list these, don't think about them as all these separate disjointed pieces, but rather as members of like your personal branding toolkit, and they feed into and all complement each other. So now we're really going to dive into all of these aspects throughout this presentation. So the first step in your journey towards building your successful personal brand and empire is to really take stock of what the narrative currently is about you. So you really need to know where you're starting and what you're working with in order to improve. And as Google is the world's largest and most popular search engine, it's a great place for you to start because Google knows everything. And this is why it's so important for you to know what is currently being said about you on there. So that being said, have you guys ever taken the time to Google yourselves? And if so, when was the last time you did? You know, if you've never done this before, that's totally okay because we're going to take some time out to do that now. So could all of you, either if you're on your laptop or on your phone, please just go into Google right now and just type in your full name and see what comes up. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. And then let us know what you're seeing. Mammy currently doing it. I love it. What do you see? You know, do your results surprise you? Are you happy with what's showing up on the first page, second, third page? Or do you have some work to do? Or you're not even showing up at all? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to complete it. Oh, I see. What if you have an incredibly common name? You know, that's a big thing too, you know, like just try to focus on, okay, so this is Dave. Let me know if you're seeing any of your results, any of the likenesses that depict you. You see my LinkedIn profile, information from my master's.
That's so funny. Apparently I've been to space and closed Ontario schools.
Oh my gosh. That's an interesting name, Dave. Solange, my LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and some things I don't even know what they are. Apollo, for example. Oh, so those are websites that kind of scrape data from other social media sites, then just accumulate it into one place. Google account, not in an incognito mode. When logged in, I see myself. Okay. My master's research thesis. Yeah, you know, this is such an eye-opening exercise. I did it myself a few years ago, and when I started, there was barely anything on there besides my Facebook page and a couple of other Samukele Ncube's Facebook pages that were on there as well. So, you know, it can be a little overwhelming, and I thought, how am I going to get to tell my story through Google? And if you feel that way, don't panic. It's completely normal. And building your brand online is a lot easier than you think. So we'll get to some of those strategies in a minute. But I really want to emphasize that this is a great exercise for you to do every couple of months as you work on building your brand. You know, new content is always being put up on the internet and taken down. And so you always want to make sure you're keeping a pulse on what's being said about you online. And that way you're in a good position to share any achievements that are being broadcasted. And likewise, do any damage control if you need to. And another thing, Dave, because there's lots of situations where people have common names and it all shows up. I think in your case, if you know what you want to be known for and to be associated with, then maybe you can try to infuse that in the content. So if you know you want to be, I don't know, software engineering, for example, you can infuse that into your profile so that when people search your name and that keyword, then your profile would show up. So talking about the importance of Google, you know, why is Google so important? You know, the front page of your resume isn't just the front page of your reputation isn't just your resume or your social media profiles. It's what pops up on Google search, because according to monster.com, which is one of the world's most popular job boards, 77% of employers use Google as part of their process when researching applicants. So as a professional job seeker, you want to make sure that you're giving yourself a leg up on the competition by cleaning up your image and using the internet to set yourself apart. So we're going to get into the next exercise where you'll really start to get acquainted with your current online presence, as well as outline some strategies to help you put your best foot forward online. So if you have your worksheets with you, could you turn to page 3, which outlines the steps you can follow as we conduct our online presence audits. And if you don't have it, that's okay. We have the steps on the next slide. So just type in yes when you're ready. Yes, 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 yes. Fantastic. Okay, so these steps, you can note them down or you can do them as we go along. But I think it's definitely an exercise worth doing if you set maybe an hour or two whenever you're free, just to make sure you go all of these steps. But I'll walk through how you can conduct each step when you're doing it. So firstly, you will want to type in your name into a number of search engines. You know, as we discussed, Google is the most popular one, but if you really want that full, well-rounded picture, it also helps to look yourself up on sites like Bing, as well as YouTube. So here you should try to be thorough and look at the image results as well, the video results, the news pages. That way you can see everything that shows up tied to your name. The next thing that you'll want to do once you have done this full rounded audit is you want to document all of the instances where your name shows up. So it could be social media profiles, you know, it could be articles or videos. So try to take stock of everything that shows up with your name and actually represents you. Like that would apply in your case, Dave. So where your actual likeness is showing up. And then once you've made your list, it's good to take some time to look at it, analyze it. You know, are there any old accounts on there that you don't use or others that you're rarely active on? So if for the accounts that you're not very active on, you may want to consider closing these down or becoming more active on them if you're looking to keep it, because it's beneficial to only keep the accounts that you actually use so that employers can see a glimpse of who you are and you can use it as a tool to support and build your personal brand. And it's also a great way to engage with other people in your industry by being on these different networks. So once you've done that, you will need to take a look at the accounts that you would actually like to keep active. You know, this is where you take the time to put on your recruiter hat and really take an objective look at the content on your accounts. So are there any unsavory things that are currently on your profile, or have you shared parts of your life that are no longer relevant to your current objective, especially on social media? And if the answer is yes, I would also recommend considering taking these down, or if you'd like to keep certain things because, you know, it's your profile after all, consider making your account private so that you can keep those private things that are personal to yourself. Because before you've even gotten the chance to get into that interview, your online presence speaks for you. And we all know that first impressions count, right? So let your online presence, you know, allow you to shine by cleaning it up and using it to support your applications. And finally, you will want to clean up any inappropriate content off of all of your public-facing profiles. And once you've done all of these things, you know, you've really built a solid foundation for your personal brand. And Naomi is really going to get into the strategies you can use to build up your online presence using platforms like social media. And as we move forward, just try to be very mindful of what you post online. You know, we all know that when something is online, it lives forever. So try to think of your personal brand before you post. Does what you're about to put up, is it hurting your personal brand? Is it going to enhance it? It's such a great litmus test to understand what the content you're putting up is going to do for your brand.
Thank you for that, Sam. So when it comes to owned versus rented media, I love this subject because it really allows you to consider the online landscape and to take control of your narrative, right? And so the simplest way to differentiate between rented and owned media is that owned media is basically the content and communication channels that you control and that you have ownership over, right? It's your little corner of the internet. It could be your own domain, your .com, and you basically have control over how you use it and the content that is on your personal site, right? It really gives you the opportunity to showcase your work, showcase your portfolio. So if you're an artist, great way to have, you know, your own personal website so people can go and see the different things that you've created. It could also include past client work, testimonials that people have provided for really the, you know, how much they loved your work or how much they love doing business with you, and your personality. So some examples of owned media are things like a personal website. So for example, you can just purchase your name, your first and last name.com, if that's something that you want to do. It can also be a blog where you can share your, you know, passion for things like fashion, sports, writing, different books. And another example of owned media can be a newsletter, right? So this is where you actually own your subscribers' emails and are able to speak with them directly. It can also be, I've been seeing a lot of text messaging apps. So a lot of individuals, you can call them influencers, who want to speak with you, but using text messaging instead of email. I've seen that take off a lot. So that's definitely a space that's growing. And the last example of owned media is an app. So I know someone mentioned earlier in the chat. So it can be an app that you created for your community, a community that you run, or for a business as well that you own. So does anyone here have any of those examples of owned media that they want to share with everyone? I know we have some bloggers in here, so we'll probably see some personal sites. Any owned media examples? So Mommy says she has a blog. Yeah, she talks about travel in her blog. Maria says I don't. Yeah, YouTube. So YouTube channel would be rented media. We're going to go into that soon, though. Anyone else have owned, working on a website right now? Yep. I and two of my friends run a blog. It's an awesome blog. I love Denish's blog. Feel free to share links also if you guys want to check out each other's work. Feel free to share links in the chat too. Murdoch's working on a website now. Love it. I have a website. Cool. The Fashion Escape. Okay. So these should be a primary content hub for your online activities, because whatever else that you're using on social media is considered rented. So something that you don't really own, even if you run your account and it says your name on it, if that platform or social media site disappears tomorrow, everything kind of goes with it, right? So all your followers, all of the messages that you have in there, the content that you've shared. So rented media, like I mentioned, are things like social media. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, these platforms could disappear tomorrow. And if social media were truly owned, you would have complete access to your audience, which is why it's really a great practice to use social media to promote the content that is on your owned media platforms. So, and it's great because everyone's using them. Most people are on Instagram, most people are on Facebook, on YouTube, and it's a great way to communicate and get in touch directly with those individuals. But I think another downside that I'll mention about social media platforms is often when algorithms change, or if your content is being censored, you're actually, even though you're sending it out to the people that you engage with, it's not a guarantee that they'll see your content, as opposed to sending an email, via newsletter, or having it on your website, or even sending a text message. So rented media, social media, is basically your megaphone, and owned media can be a personal website or blog. It's the original content. And yes, loving the websites. Okay, thanks so much for sharing what you guys are working on in the personal project. What happens, or what is the impact of not having blogs or similar things? That's a question for Maria. So I guess the main differentiation between owned versus rented is the control and the ownership aspect of things. So let's say you're promoting your business using Facebook or Instagram or any of these platforms. If the platform disappears tomorrow, or it malfunctioning, or it doesn't work, then all of your content is attached to that social platform, so it can disappear. As opposed to having your own website, you really control the content that's up there, and it's something that that doesn't fall away or disappear with the content. So it's more on the ownership and having control over what's available. I hope that answers your question, Maria. And so social media, I don't want to downplay rented media, because I think it's a really powerful channel to build a personal brand. And we'll go over some of the most popular personal channels that are out there. So for one, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, as we mentioned earlier, is a professional networking site that also allows you to develop in your career too with their courses. So on your profile, similar to your resume, you're able to have your headshot. You can complete it with your work experiences, your accomplishments, awards that you've won, the education that you have under your belt, any referrals as well. Facebook is one of the biggest social media sites on the internet. It's really great to share video content, stories, events, and even with the group. So I love the group component of it. Sam and I, when we were running our community, it was a great place to really bring together like-minded people through private groups. And it's also a great place to post events, right? If you are hosting an event in your city, it's a great way to share it on that platform, because people are able to search for events that are closest to them. Instagram is basically a photo and video sharing media app that really specializes in visual content, right? They also launched IGTV in 2018 so that more people were able to share long form content. So if you liked, in the same way that you can post long form video content on YouTube, you can also do that on Instagram. And YouTube is considered it's the second largest search engine after Google. So as Sam talked about Google earlier, a lot of people go straight to YouTube to search up content. So it's a great place to share video, anything that you're passionate about. A lot of vloggers share their lives, and also what they're knowledgeable about with folks globally. And Twitter is great for journalists, sports, entertainers, politicians. And what I love about Twitter is that you're able to plug right into conversations that you're passionate about. And I would say this is probably the truest social connection app, because I think most people are definitely love to engage on this platform. It's easier to plug in. It's so great to share quotes. And so if this is something that you really love to do, I would definitely recommend Twitter for that. So social media, the whole world is an ecosystem, and it's a great web of connecting ideas, people, different opportunities as well. But people are always at the heart, right? And it's also an outlet that allows you to express your ideas, your knowledge, your expertise. And as we mentioned at the beginning, for a purpose that you uniquely identify. So if you're looking to build a speaking career or run for office, build a business, or whatever your priorities or goals are, you can definitely use these rented forums and owned media sources to really provide content and create those touch points for people to engage with you. And so when it comes to LinkedIn, okay, so thanks so much, Sam, for mentioning that. I'll touch on it later. So when it comes to LinkedIn can be used in three main ways. For one, networking. It's definitely a great platform to build relationships with more than 65 million people who are on LinkedIn. And it's a cool fact, about 50% of those are considered decision makers, or folks who are part of teams that make decisions at their companies. So it's a melting pot, whether you want to connect with freelancers, entrepreneurs, mentors, different creatives. Definitely recommend LinkedIn for people to find valuable information, or even connect with folks that they want to work with or build with. It's also great for recruitment. Sam mentioned earlier Monster, the online job board, and LinkedIn has become also a platform that you see today where it's a popular recruiting engine that companies use to find talent to join their enterprise. And so over 95% of professional recruiters use LinkedIn to seek out potential clients, or candidates, I should say. And thirdly, branding, right? So one of the best ways to build a personal brand is through content and through storytelling. And companies are making considerable efforts and investments to promote themselves on LinkedIn and connect with their customers. So if companies are spending a lot of money in this area, I would definitely recommend that you do the same in terms of building your own personal brand. All right, so the anatomy of a LinkedIn profile. I basically went on LinkedIn and, searched up different individuals, friends also, who have creatively developed their LinkedIn profile according to like their unique personality and who they are. And so headshot, right? So make sure that your headshot is crisp. It's a nice photo. It represents who you are. If you like to smile like Tim, and that's a big part of your brand, is just sharing content and really representing your ethos, really let that shine through your photo, right? So small details like using the right picture also helps to build trust. I think, interestingly enough, there are enough data points out there that show people are less likely to accept LinkedIn connection requests if you don't have a photo image there. And so definitely make sure to get a headshot out there. But don't let that inhibit you from starting your profile either. A second component there is a brief byline, right, about you or your work. It can be a couple adjectives like storyteller, marketer, product manager, or it can be a position. Or something that I like as well is when folks use sentences to describe exactly what they offer. So it can be like helping companies increase their revenue through B2B sales, or believes in the power of film to showcase XYZ. So whatever your why is, definitely feel free to share that here. So for example, Trishala put Director of Strategy at Rumi. She's also a speaker moderator of conversations on humane tech. And Tim, he shared a little bit about his app that he created, which is called Guide, and it's a bite-sized skills training platform for remote teams. Great. It clearly tells me, what this person is up to. And then when it comes to work experience, definitely you can outline here different roles that you've held. Also, if you want to include a little paragraph about exactly, the results that you drove within that company, things that you've learned, also a great thing to add there. A lot of people include different links. So if projects that you've worked on are publicly available on these sites, feel free to put that in. People love to watch videos, so that's a great thing to do there. There's also the description section, so the about. And some people leave it blank, others put a couple paragraphs, a little bit about what they offer, if they're an entrepreneur, what they offer to different clients. And this is where you can get really creative with what you want to include. And so I pulled this one. It's an individual named Lindsay, and she started with actually just educating, right? Like how can growing your influence really help you? And she listed out ways. And when you keep reading, she talks about how she can help you, how she's uniquely equipped to really provide you value. And then she talks about her background and, why exactly, like her previous experience and that sort of thing. So get creative with this. If you want to start with your why, great. If you want to start with your website and the different projects that you have, great as well. And here, some additional items that you can also include are your education history. So, whatever school that you went to, whatever program, if you went on exchange, great. So Sam and I went on exchange during university. So we also included that as well in the history. And then also skills and endorsements. So these are items that you can select. So for folks who are speakers, you can put speaking in here, and people in your network can endorse you for these skills. So make sure to choose the skills that you want to uniquely focus on. And these can be your strengths that you would have identified in your SWOT. and you can have it here and people can actually endorse you for them. And, you know, I think what's great about LinkedIn is that whatever you're putting in your description or even around, you know, the educational experiences that you have, these are great data points. So if someone is reaching out to you, they can do their research and they could say, oh, wow, Naomi went to Norway on exchange in 2016. That's something cool that we can talk about. Maybe this person is from Norway. I have no idea. But these are all touch points and great conversation starters. So feel free to get creative with what you display on your LinkedIn profile. And I want to emphasize how it's important. It's just so important that you take the time to build a solid digital presence. And if you don't know what to write in certain areas, you can do some research, right, on different profiles that you like and adopt things that really resonate with you. Because once you have the basics of what these profiles can look like, it's so much easier to keep adding and you can definitely build further. So does everyone here have a LinkedIn profile? And how do they like using it? Or is everything filled out, or are you specifically, yes, yes. Okay, so Solange, Ricardo, Sam, you guys all have LinkedIn profiles. I saw Mia created hers as well recently. I do have one, but I don't like it. Maria, why don't you like your LinkedIn profile? Yasser has one. Because you don't think it's engaging. Interesting. Okay, so we're definitely going into storytelling right now. So yes, I feel I don't know enough of the unwritten rules of how to link with someone. Okay, let's talk about that in the question period. Carol. Great for reaching out and learning. Yeah. Dave says yes. But I needed to delete 2 duplicates. I realized by Googling myself. Okay, delete that, Tara. That's good that you know. Can you have more than one LinkedIn profile? Interesting question, Bernie. What would you be using both LinkedIn profiles for? Some people said, yes, it needs a touch up. Great. If you have the foundation, so much easier to go in and make little adjustments and tweaks where you need to. How can we ask for recommendations from someone for that recommendation section? That's a great question. And so for the recommendation section, you can honestly, like, for example, if you've worked with someone at your current company or maybe in a previous company, I would say just send them a LinkedIn message. You can send a direct message on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm looking to really build my profile up and include a lot of my past experiences. Would you mind, you know, taking a couple minutes to talk a little bit about what it was like working with me at our previous company, or even if it's someone that you've worked with on a school project, that's another great way to get people to make recommendations for you. And so I hope that answers your question, Gaurav. Yeah, Sam?
Yeah, and also for the endorsements, a great way to get people to endorse your skills is once you make sure you have them, you can endorse others. Yeah, because once you endorse someone, what they see is that so-and-so has endorsed you for X skills, say thanks. And usually then people will go to your profile and then just click on endorse on your skills.
Love it. Solange, I have no endorsements. That's a great one. So even with recommendations, like that's another thing that you can do is provide upfront value to those, and simply ask. Do you ask people to endorse you on certain skills? You can, or you can do what Sam mentioned and go on different profiles and endorse other people. Maria, for your specific questions, I'd love to go deeper into this at the end during the question period, because I think there's a little bit of back and forth that we can do. Okay, so I'll dive back into the content or stories. So here, it's not just about content. I know we talked about those different touch points that we can use to engage with people, but it's really about building trust and storytelling, right? It's about communication. It's not about hacking the algorithm or posting at 8:05 a.m. Or certain times of the day. It's not about being famous or a celebrity. It's about resonating with people through storytelling, through your specific story, right? And so there are so many ways to tell a story. Some of them include sharing a vulnerability. I think that's a great one in terms of just realizing that you're never alone in whatever you're going through at this particular moment. And so I think stories around sharing vulnerabilities or certain things that you're going through are a great way to build conversation and also just be honest also about your personal journey. Another can be asking your audience a question that has been on your mind. So if you're watching an informative video or reading a book and it's coming, you're coming up with all these questions that you're really curious about, that can be a great piece of, that could be a story, it could be a great piece of content that you share to educate and inform other people, but also get a conversation going. Can also be making a product or service recommendation, right? That has been really helpful for you on your journey, building a business, or free tools that you really like. For example, in building this slide deck, we used Canva, which is a free tool that you can use to design whatever you want, whether it's posters, logos. And so, by sharing different tools that you found helpful in your journey, you can definitely provide value to other people by sharing that online. Another can be sharing a loss, whether it's losing a deal, losing money by investing, fears that you have as well. These are great ways to really just, this is all about documenting, right? Documenting what you're going through as it's happening. Another is sharing a win, right? I think people love to hear these stories of, particular school that you got into, your first sale of a painting, learning a song on the guitar, getting into your dream company, embracing yourself more, what that process has been like, winning a competition, whatever it is. And lastly, an important lesson that you learned. And this is I love reading different lessons that people have really experienced on their path. And it's such a great way to really exchange ideas, right? And opportunities too. These are some screenshots of different posts that did incredibly well on the LinkedIn platform with like thousands of shares, thousands of likes and comments. And if you notice, they each used one of the strategies that were mentioned in the previous slide. So one individual said, yesterday I was one of 1,900 Airbnb employees that was laid off because of COVID's impact on the travel industry. And she gets into her story, right? So she's sharing a loss, she's sharing a vulnerability. And she basically does this call to recruiters or hiring managers. If you're hiring, please send me a message or comment on this post directly. And really encouraged people to sort of engage with herself, and also invited folks to really make an introduction, or she'd be willing to make an introduction and review any portfolios or resumes that were available. And I love that. Like, I think she's sharing exactly what was going on with her at that particular moment, and that was a piece of content that resonated with people. The second one, someone said, "This is so dope. It's actually refreshing not to have to search high and low for illustrations of Black characters for slide decks or other interactive presentations." And so this individual made a product or service recommendation for illustrators or designers to use different icons that are like representative, right? And this is actually something that he created himself and shared it as a product, which is fantastic. And the third one here is this individual sharing a win. So he said, "I am honored and humbled to share that I'll be deferring Yale Law School to pursue a doctor of philosophy, blah, blah, blah." And then he talks about him being a first-generation college graduate from a low-income Mexican-American background. And he talks about his mother and his father and what he's been through and how he was able to make it to this point. And this is him sharing a win, as well as a lesson, right? And just his path. So these are about storytelling. This is about sharing your personal story, things that you've learned, things that you find value in. And you know, it's just, people want to engage with this. They want to engage with real human beings. And the pattern that you noticed that these individuals did is that they had a hook. They had something to really grab the reader's attention, whether it was an image or the first line of the post, that gets you to, you know, when you're scrolling, sometimes aimlessly, and there's something that gets you to stop and read further. So the hook is a really important element when you're telling a story. And the second component is the story itself. So this is like the body of it. This is where you share your fears, dreams that you have, lessons learned, you overcoming challenges. And the last component is this action piece. So after people are done reading it, are they compelled to engage with you? Are they compelled to send you a direct message? Are they compelled to buy something from you? If you can include these three components when you're sharing online, it's a great way to get people to definitely engage further and really build a community that way.
That is so true. You know, especially when it comes to content, I love your point about documenting, because we're always told create content, be active on these platforms, but it's so hard to come up with the right content to put up. So by documenting, you really take the pressure out of that whole process, and it shows people you're human. As you said, you want to interact with other people, not like machines or characters. So thank you for that, Naomi. You know, I think that really ties together the digital piece. And as you mentioned earlier, there's a second part to this whole personal branding thing, which is the in-person side. So, you know, we all know that when it comes to personal branding, networking is everything. And I'm sure we've all heard the saying that your network is your net worth, right? So this has never been truer than it is now. And we have really delved into the online aspect. So now it's time to fill in this picture with the in-person. So, you know, social media and online content is always speaking for you, even when you're not in the room. But what happens when you are in the room? You know, this is where we start to talk about networking and how you can use it to help build your personal brand. So created, trusted interpersonal relationships and connections can really help you to gain traction and credibility as you start to grow in your career. And it's such a great way for you to be able to get out there and meet new people. And a great way to do this is by attending networking events. So I'm curious, how many of you guys regularly attended networking events, either post-COVID or now with the online events? Let me know in the chat, and how did you feel about them when you went?
Pre-COVID?
Yeah, pre-COVID.
I wish we were in post-COVID.
My brain's ahead. Seeing the future. Yeah, pre-COVID, if you went to physical in-person networking events, how did you feel about them? And did you go? If so, how often did you go? So Dave, sure, at least once a month, great place to meet people. Maria, no, I don't know how to do it, but would love to. Solange, it's been a while, but very advantageous. Carol, I haven't and don't really know how to find them. Well, thank you all for sharing. You know, honestly, when I first started networking, I absolutely hated it. But it's, you know, I quickly realized it was because I was doing it all wrong. When I started going to these events, I was going just for the sake of networking, and because everyone says you have to network in order to get ahead, you know. So, you know, I really had to take the time to reframe what networking was for me and what it meant. And that's when things really started to change. So, you know, now we're going to really delve into, you know, how to get the most out of these networking events. So the first thing that you'll need to do is, you know, think of networking as building relationships. When we describe it as, you know, networking, it tends to take the human side out of things, and it can really steal joy out of the experience, because at its core, what you're doing when you attend these events is that you're exposing yourself to a number of individuals who share the same interest as you and are in similar industries that you are. So being in this environment, it really creates an amazing opportunity for you to build relationships and connect with like-minded people. And, you know, that's even exactly how Naomi and I met 2 years ago. It was through a networking event. You know, we connected offline, and here we are today, 2 years down the road. So you could even make friends at these things. So, you know, step one is really to reframe networking into building relationships with like-minded peers and even potential mentors. So the second thing that you'll need to do as you network is to set a goal for yourself. You know, as I mentioned earlier, it's not enough just to network for the sake of networking. You really need to set a goal for yourself that will serve as your compass as you choose, you know, which events to attend and which people you like to connect with. You know, building relationships and being social, it does take a lot of energy, especially if you're introverted in nature. So you really want to allocate your energy in the most efficient ways. And for example, like if you're a real estate agent, your goal could be to connect with other real estate agents in your industry. Or if you're a marketer, you may want to connect with other marketers in your industry so that you can come together, you can learn from each other and share any strategies or tactics that have worked. Then that way you're both able to help each other grow in your careers. So the third thing, you know, once you've established your goal, your next step, which speaks to your point, I think it was Maria, you know, is to find events that will help you achieve your goal. So for example, if you're a real estate agent from the previous example, you would need to look for real estate meetups, conferences, and events. So I know right now we can't go physically to things, but there's still a lot of virtual events going on, which you can find on websites like Meetup, Eventbrite. You know, Facebook also does have a lot of events that you could find as well. So what you could do is when you're on the search engine, just type in, you know, the industry you're in, and then you could say events or meetups or groups. And that way you're able to find events and sessions that are tailored to your goal. And then that way you don't waste your time at a meetup that has nothing to do with the industry that you're in and does not align with your goal. So I hope that answers your question, Maria. The fourth thing, you know, like the real value of these in-person events or virtual events like this is that you get to meet people and you have the chance to make a great first impression. So, you know, all things being normal, if you're prepared with your elevator pitch, you have a solid and firm handshake, and you carry yourself well, you're really well positioned to meet other people and start to build that relationship. So try to make it your goal to make at least 2 meaningful contacts at any networking event. And that way you can leave the event with real results. And, you know, you have 2 new people who are now part of your network that you didn't know before. So even now with everything that's going on, you can still attend events and make those connections virtually. And the great thing is that a lot of these events do have chat boxes like this one. So it's a good way to engage with other participants as well and connect with them after the event. So if you'd like others to connect with you following the session, drop your LinkedIn name in the chat, or actually your LinkedIn URL. Then that way it's easier to connect. So the next and probably most important thing for you to do following any event is to follow up. You know, the follow up is so important because you can meet so many people at an event, but if the conversation never continues afterwards, then what was the point? You know, following up can look like sending a thank you email, you know, if you're on LinkedIn, sending a personalized connection request saying, hey, it was lovely to meet you at X place, I'd love to connect. Or you could schedule a coffee or Zoom meeting to continue the conversation. And that's exactly how you can start to build the relationship. And finally, you know, building a network and building your brand can be a lot of work, and it takes a lot of energy, especially in between working and other social and familial obligations that you may have. So throughout this journey, I really want to emphasize that it's so important to be gentle and to be patient with yourself. You know, set realistic goals, and that could look like attending, you know, 1 event a month or making 2 new connections a month, whatever is attainable for you. So although these may look like baby steps when you're looking at them from the beginning, if you keep pushing slowly and consistently, you know, a year from now, you'll look up and see, wow, your network has increased from what it was when you first started. So as you build connections and relationships with others, don't lose sight of the most important relationship that you have, and that's the one that you have with yourself. So this brings us to the end of our workshop. We have a few minutes left, but I really wanted to take the time. Naomi and I really want to thank you all for taking the time to learn with us tonight. In this workshop, we really delved into how you can conduct your personal SWOT analysis, build your personal brand, and market yourself online using rented and owned media. But we also wanted to share the third and final part of the series, which will be taking place on June the 2nd, which is exactly 2 weeks from today. So that one is really going to build off of what we learned today, as well as the first one on mindset, and is going to be talking about building relationships. So what we'll cover are things like how to contact prospective employers and engage with them on digital platforms, how to build transformational instead of transactional relationships at networking events and online, and how to help grow your confidence while networking and sharing your value as you do so. So thank you, everyone. I think we have some time to take 1 or 2 questions. So if anyone wanted to unmute yourselves, just raise your hand. We'll be able to unmute you and we can get the conversation started. It's just a little button at the bottom of your screen. But while we wait.
Thanks, Ricardo. Thanks, Nita. Great to see you all.
Yeah, there were 2 questions from Maria, which was how to engage. Was it how to engage with people at events? There was another one, what if you have different areas of experience that are not related at all? Well, I think that was with the skills on LinkedIn, right?
Maria, do you want to unmute yourself, or do you want to come on and chat? We have like 1 minute, 2 minutes to do that. But on LinkedIn, don't feel like you need to put yourself in a box when it comes to the different skills that you have. There's room, I think, at the bottom of the LinkedIn profile for the skills and endorsements, where you can have up to 3 or 4 different major skill sets. So feel free to populate that area with the skills that you and strengths that you do possess, so that it's available for people to actually go in and endorse you for them.
And from Gaurav, how often do you follow up with the new connections which you have made to remain in contact? I would suggest after you've met the person, let's say the event was today, when you get home in the evening or a few hours later, just send a message via LinkedIn with your connection request, which is something important. When you send your connection request, there's a field to add a note. Always use that to give context to the person as to where you met. So you can just say, hey, thanks for meeting at this event. Maybe mention something you talked about in your conversation and just ask them to connect. So from there, once they've accepted, you can start the conversation. And then just depending on how the conversation goes, if you decide to meet up for coffee or have a that in-person, that dialogue, you can kind of gauge how often to follow up from there. But if it's something that you have a conversation today, maybe give it a few weeks or months and then reach back out again with offering the other person value, hey, I was reading this article on X that you mentioned last time, thought you might find it helpful. Just always try to give value, which is a great way to build the relationship.
That's a really important one.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. How to engage using on LinkedIn if you're not posting anything. A great way you can get started is, I think, liking and commenting on people's posts. If you see a post that really resonates with you or you find value from, then go and comment in there. But give something meaningful. So maybe share what you learned or why it resonates with you. That way it gets the dialogue going, because LinkedIn is still nice in the sense that it has a wide, it has a lot of visibility. So even if you comment on someone's post, it will expose other people in that person's network to your profile. So you're able to start to get to know people who are not in your immediate network. But that's a great way to start building up your content. Then when you get comfortable enough, you can start sharing your own posts.
And I think that's sometimes underestimated, of actually going and commenting on other people's posts, but that can go a long way, and it's such a great way to add value to. If it's something that you agreed with, something that you disagreed with, or if there's maybe an article that you wrote on the subject that you can go and say, hey, I actually delved into this topic a little bit on my blog, check it out. That's such a great way to engage with people. And I think if you go and send them a direct message after engaging with them through their content, they're so much more likely to be like, okay, this is a familiar person. Let's talk further. And so it's a great way to break the ice online, virtually.
And to answer Joss's question, are your LinkedIn profiles public, or have you restricted them to third-degree connections? I think that's a matter of personal preference. For me, I have it public so that if there's ever like opportunities or anything, my profile's wide open. But if you feel more comfortable, keeping certain things to yourself, or keeping your profile hidden to people who would be in your circle, then you could do that. So it's just a matter of personal preference.
And, there's an option on LinkedIn for you to make certain parts of your profile public or private. So if you go into your settings, you can say, it'll break it down by section, kind of the way that we did in the presentation. So if you want your profile picture to be public or private, your byline, your about section, the description, do you want your work experience to be listed, your education, and you can go and hide certain things of your profile that you don't want to be available to everyone, but would only be available to your first degree connections. So if you wanted to break that down by section, because maybe you don't want people to know the years that you went to school, I don't know what it is, whatever your personal interest is, you can actually make certain parts of your LinkedIn profile public or private. So there's definitely customization there.
From Maria, is there a risk that I go wrong with LinkedIn? What things should I avoid? So with LinkedIn, it's just kind of like every other social media platform, in the sense that you want to make sure you're just being like respectful, not trolling anyone. I think it can be hard to go wrong or pinpoint areas for you to go wrong. I think if you just make sure that you always have like good intentions and you're not doing anything that's going to harm anyone else, then like you should be okay. So try not to be afraid, like as you start to engage, and it can be scary becoming more engaged on these platforms. But I think just taking that first step is a great way for you to start to learn. And as you keep going, like you'll know what feels right for you and what doesn't. But in all things, just try to be authentic to yourself. And one more from Carol. How do you go into someone's LinkedIn without them finding out it was you, so you don't look like a stalker and get new ideas?
I'm going to see if I can share my LinkedIn screen, because I can show you directly how you're able to.
If not, I can share here.
All right, can you see my LinkedIn?
Okay.
Can you see my LinkedIn profile here?
Yeah.
All right, so if you go into your LinkedIn, you can go to me. If anyone wants to follow along, go to settings and privacy. And you can scroll down here, how others see your LinkedIn activity. And you can do here, profile viewing options. Choose whether you're visible or viewing in private mode. So you can go in and you can change it. So you can make it an anonymous, so you can go and check out other people's profiles without them knowing it's you in private mode. So it'll just be anonymous. Or you can actually do make it kind of customized. So if you want you want the individual to know that it's a recruiter, for example, but not you specifically. Or you can make everything visible, and that's what I did. So it's your name and your headline. So everything that's available there. So you can go in and you can adjust it. maybe during the periods where you want people to know who you are, you can make that available. And when you want to go and do research, you can make it private. So you can play around with it and be flexible in that way. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. I know we're over the 7 o'clock period, so if you have any further.
Yeah, if you have any additional questions, feel free to connect with Naomi and I on LinkedIn. I'm just going to drop the links to our profiles here, and we can continue the conversation. But we really wanted to say thank you to the Ottawa Public Library for creating this space for us to connect. Thank you, Jill, Tracy, and Marlene for joining us, for making this possible this evening. And thank you to each and every one of you for coming out and investing this time in yourself tonight. So we look forward to seeing you guys at our next session. We put the link in the chat as well. And thank you all for being so engaged. It's so fun to be able to like chat with you guys and you know, learn from you too. So thank you.
And thank you from the Ottawa Public Library to both Sam and Naomi for joining us tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
See you at the next one.